What's going on, Xbox ambassadors? I'm here with what I think is going to be a pretty cool interview. I have a very special guest. I'm joined by John Sherwin, who is, what's your title again, John?
It is Senior Software Engineer.
Ooh, sounds very important. Thanks for stopping by and chatting with us. I think this is going to be a really cool interview, kind of giving some insight to our Xbox ambassadors about a lot of things, specifically around the Xbox website that you kind of worked on. But before we get into this, tell us a bit about yourself and kind of what you do here.
Sure, yeah. So I am a Senior Software Engineer with the Community Empowerment and Protection Team, which is part of Xbox Product Services. And so I'm on a team of about 5 engineers.
Nice.
And so we implement solutions not only for the ambassador program, but also across a number of disciplines, including safety, security, accessibility, and privacy.
There you go.
Yeah. So
That's awesome.
yeah, awesome.
So you obviously started on the ambassadors team before kind of expanding your role. What does being an ambassador mean to you?
Yeah, definitely. So I actually started on the team in 2014, and I was really excited to be part of this team because of this program that had existed around this passionate group of gamers that took their time to actually help make the Xbox gaming platform a better place, a safer place. It's very impressive, and I'm just kind of blown away by the amount of time ambassadors will spend, helping other gamers and just making the experience a much better and safer experience, which is awesome.
You can't give them enough, all of the ambassadors enough credit. Like what you do at Xbox is super important. Now, when you're going, let's talk about the website a bit because when you're going to sort of the task of like redoing the website, like what comes to mind immediately? What are you saying? Like this is what I have to tackle, like kind of high level.
Yeah, definitely. So especially with a project like the rebuilding of the Xbox Ambassador website, it's a tremendous opportunity to start from the beginning. And think about the user experience. That's where you start. Like, we're building this for this group of people. What are their needs? What do they want out of the experience? And so with this project, that was where we started, right? One of the challenges is I think we jumped into the project initially, and we're kind of on a tight timeline initially. And then we're moving kind of past that phase, but we took an opportunity to step back and say, you know what? We have this great opportunity. Let's start and really spend the time in that design phase.
Right.
So that's kind of the piece of starting with the experience of the ambassadors themselves.
Got it. And my understanding is that you mentioned how many people work on the team. A lot of people kind of work together. What are some of the roles that you kind of have when kind of redesigning the website?
Yeah, totally. So I can kind of just walk through the process and then a lot of the teams that we worked with, right? So we started in the beginning with user experience design. And so there was a team actually from Affirma Consulting that they focus on the actual design of the experience. And so we started there. So that was the first team that we engaged. And when I say we, it's the engineering team plus the communications and operations team for the ambassadors. So it was a big group of people just focused on that experience. So we spent a good, really, 3 months in that phase. From there, we go into the graphic design. So now we have an experience. Now we actually layer on the fonts and the colors and so that's another team here at Microsoft, which is actually the Xbox Customer Experiences team, design team. So we worked with them on the design piece, the actual graphic design piece. And then we went into the engineering piece, which is actually the functionality, how actually the site works. And so we spent a good 4 months on that phase. And then we did, throughout the process actually, we involved Xbox user research to actually get more of a pulse about what the users needed, and also feedback on the design as we progressed through. So that was another team that we engaged. We also had a number of different partner teams that we had to work with in Microsoft. One of the teams was the Xbox Live Services team. We had to work with them because we embarked on using a new authentication mechanism. When you go sign into the website, we chose to use the modern sign-in approach, which we had to work with Xbox Live Services team so they could accommodate that. So it was great to work across different teams. And that's common at Microsoft to have those partnerships across.
Sort of this one Microsoft idea, right?
That's one Microsoft, yeah, which has actually been fantastic. We also worked with the Skype Web Services web control team, and that is a component that we use for the chat system.
Got it.
So that's just an example of the different teams that we engaged with. But it was fantastic. Like throughout the process, we had a weekly sync meeting. We had a number of different stakeholders involved. and we would get updates on the site. So it was really cool to have that kind of involvement with a lot of different people all the way through from the start in the user experience design all the way to the launch.
Yeah, and so what I'm hearing, and I think this is super important, especially for our ambassadors who, obviously do amazing work within the community, is that this is not something that kind of just came out of nowhere. There's and there's a lot of people that sort of worked on the website. Now you mentioned this a bit earlier, but obviously the website we kind of said that it would be out 2017, and then at some point we hit a snag or something, and you kind of alluded to this. What was the point during the development of the website when the team sat back and said, hey, we really need to push this back maybe and prioritize a few different things?
Absolutely, yeah. So it was in that early phase. I mean, to give a little background too, I think some of the ambassadors have been with the program remember that we relaunched in 2015, actually, November 2015. We rebranded the program and launched from, it was Xbox Community Leveling, and we changed to this new ambassador focus.
Right.
And so we, the engineering team at the time, pretty much just did all the work ourselves. And what you got is a design from an engineer, which typically engineers don't do design, just because we have a very functional perspective.
Sure.
So we did that because at the time we were limited and constrained for budgets, as well as there was pressure to update the site. The site had a lot of the existing Xbox Community Leveling program. The site had a lot of issues, and so we wanted to address those. For this opportunity that we had, we started in that same direction, and then we realized, wait a second, again, we have an opportunity here to do something great, and that's what we want to do. We want to do something great. At least want to strive to greatness. And so at that point, we then said, look, let's go through that formal process of the design and spend enough time in design so that we get a really good outcome. Yeah. And so that's when we reset the project and we went back to kind of the beginning and engaged with the Affirma consulting team and started on that UX and UI design process.
Yeah, and I think
No, that's good. Yeah.
No, I think ambassadors probably would agree that the site looks much nicer and is much more user friendly than it was before, and with a lot more functionality, obviously. So now now that the site's launched, I think you don't go through the process that you kind of just described with working with so many teams and working over such a long period of time without kind of coming away with some learnings and takeaways that maybe next time we change up. What were some of those things for your team?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the challenges, I think, when we had set a goal for ourselves, a very aggressive timeline of launching the site for the July 1st season changeover, 2018. So we had this fixed deadline. We, like I said, spent a lot of time in the design phase, and what that did is it ended up compressing the time that we were spending actually doing the implementation and feedback. So one of the things that we had planned to do in the beginning is to get more feedback from ambassadors. And what we found is because we're hitting up against that deadline, we ended up cutting corners and not involving the community as much in the actual acceptance testing of what we built. Because even when we start off with the design, oftentimes when we get to the point where we implement it, that's another opportunity where we can see, is this really what we need and want? So I think there was just not enough time budgeted, when we actually had something to share. And then we did, and I take responsibility for this too, we did make some decisions in a vacuum, especially around the migration to a new chat technology. And that caused a lot of frustration in the ambassador community, and rightfully so, because the ambassador identity was revealed. So therefore we had to take a step back, right? And now we're redesigning this, and the goal or the approach now that we're going to take is to make sure anytime we introduce a new feature that ambassadors have an opportunity to verify and test it. And if there's an opportunity to see both the customer and ambassador side, we want to provide that as well. So chat's a good example because there's a customer experience, there's an ambassador experience. And our plan is to show and reveal that in a preview environment so that ambassadors can really understand everything about what they're going to be using and give us feedback. Because ultimately we're building, everything we do is for the community.
Right.
And so it needs to be, there needs to be community involvement. And so that's the big takeaway. And I think going forward, we want to try to really start releasing changes on a more frequent cadence. So if we can do something on a monthly basis, whether it's fixing issues or implementing new features, we want to be doing that more frequently. So like you said, we're not going to have this really, as involved of a process, but we certainly want to make sure we involve the community. We certainly want to make sure we address privacy concerns and security concerns and accessibility concerns. Those are a priority for our team. So that's the approach we'll take going forward. for.
Yeah, I think obviously this is the reason why we have you here, because I think this is something that only you could speak to, and I think it's super important to hear for ambassadors to hear how much we took their feedback into consideration, to the point where it almost kind of set us back a bit, but it's super important.
Yes.
I think we got those learnings that you just mentioned, and I think going forward that's something that we're going to absolutely take into account. Now, obviously the website is just one part of the grander ambassador sort of plan. What are some of the things you're excited for going down? Maybe you don't have to do specifics.
Sure.
But just maybe some of the just general ideas of what we're going to do going forward.
Absolutely. So I can definitely speak from a personal perspective.
Sure.
I mean, certainly, when we reveal and launch the updated chat system on top of Responder, that will be a great win, right? And that's something we're very much excited about and working on currently. So that's something that's imminent, right?
Sure.
Close at hand. I'm really excited though with the partnership with Gaming for Everyone. So Gaming for Everyone at Microsoft really is about creating a more inclusive environment across all the different products in gaming. So that's an opportunity for us to really increase our diversity and start really making sure that we're creating opportunities for everyone. Right. So that's a big piece there, and that will manifest itself from a technical perspective, I think, in a variety of ways. One of the things that we saw when we did a survey along the way is that ambassadors are out there doing things that we're not currently tracking. And so I think one of the things that we're really excited about is understanding what those activities are, so we can start to reward and recognize ambassadors doing things that aren't the activities that are currently listed on our website. So really that Gaming for Everyone partnership, as well as just understanding how we can programmatically, right, detect when ambassadors are doing things and reward and recognize them. So those are the two big things on my mind.
Awesome. I love Gaming for Everyone. I think it's just so important for a corporation the size of Microsoft, and it's so kind of inspiring to see us really taking that Gaming for Everyone sort of mindset and really going for it, making sure we're going for it. What are some of the technical measures that come with like trying to create the website for accessibility and diversity within the program?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's actually pretty cool the way Microsoft across the company now is tracking, right, how different websites and services are addressing, right, those concerns around accessibility, security, and privacy. So there is a formal guided questionnaire process, and we have team members who guide us through that process and basically evaluate the website, right, for those requirements that they have. When we went through that process with accessibility specifically with the website, so we did get a list of things, recommendations. We did tackle some of those. There are still things that we want to address, and we will do that over time. So that's one way, is just going through that whole review process that each of the different disciplines, right, have. So that's the primary way, right, to get the feedback. We're fortunate in this new group that I mentioned, the Customer Empowerment and Protection team, that we have somebody that's just fantastic, that's leading up the focus for the accessibility discipline. So we have direct access to that team.
Awesome.
And so going forward, anytime we have a new feature, we'll definitely go through that review process.
Right.
And out of that will come either things that we have to or we want to make sure we address, and things that down the road we want to address. So everybody can, I think, rest assured that is a process, right, that everybody goes through. And we're committed to it too, right?
Yeah.
We don't just do it because we have to, we do it because we want to.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's super important. And I think, like you mentioned, having one person who's like, that's their sole purpose, which is to make sure that everything is sort of vetted through the lens of accessibility. Super important. These are not just words. These are foundational sort of beliefs that we have here at Microsoft, that really inclusivity and accessibility is super important. Now, obviously, we talked a lot about the website and some of the things that we maybe we learned. What do you consider some of the biggest wins? I think there were many.
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the big wins is just the whole collaborative process that went through. I mean, we heard from a number of different participants in that process that it was an example of a project where we did go through this in a very methodical, phased approach, but we did it in a way that was very agile. So I think it's a great example, and I think we demonstrated, hey, this is a successful process that we can use going forward.
Sure.
So I think that's a big win. I think going back to that involvement with the community. I mean, I think the partnership we had with Xbox User Research and understanding the needs of the community. I think that that's great too, because I think we now have a method that we can survey and get really meaningful feedback from the community. And going forward, that's something we're going to be just baking into everything we do. So I think that's great. I think the other part too is we really set out to do something very ambitious and bold with a relatively small team. And I think we definitely delivered on that. While, of course, nothing's ever perfect. We always strive for something, and we strive to hit a target. We may not hit that target, but I think we set a standard for the team of let's really try to go out and do something big, right? And put our all into that. And I think that's the big piece too. Everybody that was involved, I think, has a sense of pride and ownership of the end result. And I'm hopeful that the ambassador community has that same sense of pride and ownership too, because certainly that's something that we will continue to build on. I mean, we have ambitious plans as well to ultimately involve the community, even to the point of having them be participating in the engineering effort. So these are the kind of ambitious things that we want to tackle. So I just look forward to engaging more with the ambassador community directly and getting them as involved as we can possibly get them.
Awesome. Listen, we do this all for you, and again, I mentioned this earlier, but having you specifically here to kind of talk about it, someone who's passionate, someone who's been on the team, and someone who can come at it from an engineering perspective, it's just amazing. So, John, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Malik. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Awesome.
Hopefully, ambassadors enjoyed this, and maybe we'll see more interviews coming in the future.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.